Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast Special Edition 2020-2021 NHL Seasons Predictions Show. I'm going to go through the standings, the playoffs, the Stanley Cup Final winner, the awards winners, best rookies, breakout and most improved players, flop players, who will be on the Seattle Kraken, and a lot more. So let's get right to it, and we're going to start with the standings. And I'm going to start with the new East Division. In first place with 67 points, the Philadelphia Flyers. They still have their core intact. Carter Hart already year 3 for him. Year 2 as a full-time guy. Claude Giroux and Jacob Voracek, Sean Couturier, all still there. Levan Yolton year 2 there. Their defense is really good, led by Ivan Provorov. In second place with 66 points, I have the Boston Bruins. I think this is a team that's window is certainly closing. Tuukka Rask, I don't think it's the same guy anymore. Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand are still there. David Pastrnak led the league in goals last year. Their defense is Daniel Chara's gone, but Charlie McAvoy is ready to step up. Third place, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins at 65 points. Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin are still there. Tristan Jarry's the new goalie, replacing Matt Murray, who was traded to Ottawa. Chris Letang still manning the defense. Kasperi Kapanen, new addition. In fourth place, I have the New York Islanders with 64 points. This is who I think is going to be the last playoff team in the East Division. Barry Trotz is in his third year there, and he's done nothing but win since going to the Islanders. They're in the conference finals a year ago. I think this team is very disrespected by fans and the media. Matt Barzal, Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, Josh Bailey. They have some talented forwards, and then their defense is really good, led by Nick Leddy and Ryan Pulock. And in goal, you have Semyon Varlamov. And Varlamov is somebody that I'm not a super fan of, but they have a rookie goaltender, Ilya Sorokin, who's ready to step in if needed. In fifth place, I have the Washington Capitals, so I have them barely out of the postseason. Don't forget the rule is for this season that the top 4 of each division make the postseason. So the Capitals, unfortunately for them, will be left out. Alex Ovechkin's still there. Nicholas Backstrom's still there. They have a new coach in Peter Laviolette. And Laviolette's one of the coaches that just have bounced around a lot lately. He went from Carolina, where he won a cup, to Philadelphia, where he took them to a Stanley Cup final. So the Predators, where he took them to a Stanley Cup final. So he's been to 3 finals, has won once. So that was a good hire, but it's just unfortunate that the Capitals were screwed by the league this year, like a couple other teams, including one I'm going to get to next. I mentioned Ovechkin and Backstrom. John Carlson leads the way on their defense. Braden Holtby's gone. He's signed with the Canucks. And the goalie that's going to step in is Ilya Samsonov, who showed some promise last year as a rookie. In sixth place with 60 points, I have the New York Rangers. This was a team that made the postseason last year because they were in the bubble, or the expanded postseason, I should say. Obviously, their big story for the offseason was that they won the draft lottery and took Alexis Lafreniere with the first overall pick. He joins Artemi Panarin and Chris Kreider and Pavel Vucinovic, Kaapo Kakko. That's like a loaded offensive team in New York. They're loaded on the left wing, especially with Panarin, Kreider, and Lafreniere. Ryan Strom's there too. Obviously, Mika Zibanejad, who is emerging as one of the best centers in the league. Igor Shesterkin's their new starting goalie. Henrik Lundqvist obviously moved on from the team, and now he's dealing with a heart problem, so hopefully he gets well soon. And then their defense, Adam Fox emerged last year. Tony DeAngelo's coming off a career year. Jacob Trouba is somebody that I think they want to see more from. Keandre Miller's a rookie that they like. In seventh place with 53 points, the Buffalo Sabres. They were screwed by the new division setup as well. Jack Eichel, amazingly already in his 6th year. It's crazy to think that because Eichel's I remember when he was drafted with Connor McDavid like it was yesterday. And then you have Sam Reinhart there. Taylor Hall's a new addition to that team. Eric Stahl's another new addition to that team. So they look to be better offensively. Rasmus Dahlin is a superstar in the makers. Rasmus Ristolainen's still there. Brandon Montour's on their defense, but there are questions in goal. Linus Ullmark's supposed to be their starter, and then their backup's Carter Hutton. And in the basement of this division, in 8th place with 48 points, I have the New Jersey Devils. Devils are just a mess in terms of a roster. Although they have some young, promising players like Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. PK Subban's on that team, but he's past his prime, it looks like. Mackenzie Blackwood's a nice young goalie, but I'm not sure if he's their long-term solution. Corey Crawford signed with them in the offseason, but he wound up retiring. And on defense, they have some guys that I think are keepers, like Damon Saverson and Will Butcher. I think those guys can stay around. Sammy Vatanen's back on this team, but I don't know if he'll see playing time. Ryan Murray's a veteran that they signed in the offseason. All right, the Central Division. This division's really good. In first place with 72 points, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay, obviously the reigning Cup champions. Nikita Kucherov, unfortunately, is going to miss the regular season with an injury. So hopefully he's back in time for the postseason. That's obviously a huge loss for Tampa Bay for the regular season as he underwent surgery on his right hip. Steven Stamkos has to have a big year for them to get back to repeating potentially. Braden Point, really good player. Alex Killorn, Barclay Goodrow, they gave up a lot for him, but he really needs to step up. Blake Coleman's another guy they gave up a ton for. Their defense is stacked. Victor Hedman, Mikhail Sergachev, Ryan McDonough. And then the rookie Cal Foote, I think, is someone that's a rising star. Andrei Vasilevsky's in goal. He's obviously a Vezina candidate yearly. In second place with 67 points, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. They benefit from moving to a different division. They're out of that division with Pittsburgh and the Islanders and the Rangers and Washington and Philly. And they come over to this division for this season, and they are beneficiaries. Andrei Svechnikov is somebody that I think is going to be a super-duper star. Obviously, Sebastian Aho is awesome. They also have Jordan Stahl and Vincent Trocheck, who are veterans. Niederreiter's somebody that's been good for them. Teuvo Teravainen, that was a great trade a couple years ago. On defense, they're deep. Dougie Hamilton, Jacob Slavin, Brett Pesky, they're really stacked there. And then Brady Shea, they got in that trade from the Rangers. Jake Gardner's a guy that is kind of past his prime at this point. And maybe in the right situation he could do well, but I still have questions with Carolina in goal. Peter Mrazek, to me, is very erratic. In third place with 65 points, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets. Columbus, to me, was also a beneficiary for being out of that brutal East Division and into this division. John Tortorella, to me, is the coach that always seems like he's on the hot seat but finds a way to save his job every year. Pierre-Luc Dubois, his name's been in trade rumors. I really am not sold on that. Pierre-Luc Dubois, I think, is going to be a star. Max Domi was an offseason pickup. Nick Foligno and Cam Atkinson are still there. Gustav Nyquist, they got in the trade last year. He's been very good for them. Oliver Bjorkstrand, someone that broke out for them a year ago. Sakuretsky and Seth Jones on the back end, really good. And then they have a good goalie tandem, which I don't think is going to last, potentially, for the season. Jonas Korpisalo and Elvis Merskilins. We saw both of those guys play in the bubble, and they kept going back and forth, back and forth. So that is something that Columbus has to solve for me. In fourth place with 64 points, the last team in the playoffs in the Central Division is the Dallas Stars, your reigning Western Conference champions. Same crew back: Tyler Sagan, Jamie Benn, Alexander Radulov, Joe Pavelski's back with them. Roop Hintz is somebody that people are high on. Miro Hiskinen's a star in the making. John Klingberg also on the back end. Antoine Khudobin was awesome in that cup run for Dallas. He's back. They re-signed him. In fifth place with 63 points, just barely missing out on the postseason, the Nashville Predators. This is a good team, but they just, to me, barely missed the cut. John Hines is their coach now. I'm not a huge John Hines fan. They have a lot of big names offensively, but they really never put it together. Like Victor Vritzin, Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene. Like, those guys are really talented guys, but they just never put it together. Eli Tolvanen is a rookie that they're relying heavily on this year. He was very highly touted. Their defense is stacked. Roman Josi, Matthias Elkholm, Ryan Ellis, Dante Fabro is a great top four on defense. And it looks like that UC Saros will be their starting goalie instead of Pekka Rinne, which is a ballsy decision by John Hines. Obviously, Rinne is somebody that has had some playoff failures, but regular season success in the past. And Saros, obviously, is someone that proved that he could potentially start on a team. But it's going to be interesting to see what way they go in goal, but it looks like they might go with Saros. In sixth place with 56 points, I have the Florida Panthers. Joel Quenneville in year number 2 there. They have some talent. Alexander Barkov, Jonathan Huberdeau, Patrick Hornquist was an acquisition. Anthony Duclair was an acquisition. They lose a lot of guys in trades and free agency, which hurts them. On the back end, they have Keith Yandel, Aaron Ekblad. Those are solid players. Sergei Bobrovsky, to me, has to have a bounce-back season for them to be a force to be reckoned with in the Eastern Conference. In seventh place with 49 points, the Chicago Blackhawks. This is a team that, obviously, I think window is closed. They were in the bubble last year and won a round. They beat Edmonton. And they played Vegas, and I believe they lost in 5 or 6. And I just don't think this team is going to be that great. Jonathan Taves, Patrick Kane still there, and obviously Taves is somebody that is going to miss the start of the season due to an illness, not COVID-19 related. Kirby Dach is someone that they're banking on to emerge as like their next core. He suffered a right wrist injury at the World Juniors. Alex DeBrincat, I think, is somebody that's entering his prime. Alex Nylander is someone that I like. Dylan Strom's a good player. Patrick Kane's awesome. He's still Patrick Kane to me. Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook, to me, are 2 guys that are sort of in decline. And then Malcolm Subban's their starting goalie. When I had my friend Steve on the podcast on Thursday, I almost went over on the Blackhawks, and I realized that Malcolm Subban was their goalie, so I decided to go under. So that's a team that needs a new goaltender or a goalie for the future. Malcolm Subban, to me, is somebody that's facing a little bit of a make-or-break year in Chicago as he finally gets his opportunity here to start in the NHL. And obviously, Subban came over from Vegas in the trade that sent Robin Lehner from Chicago to Vegas. In the cellar of the Central Division, so 8th place with 38 points to the Detroit Red Wings. This is easily, to me, the worst team in the NHL. They were the worst team in the league last year. They're going to be the worst team in the league again this year. They have some nice building blocks. Anthony Mantha, Tyler Bertuzzi, Dylan Larkin. And they have a lot of guys who they want to flip at the deadline for other pieces like Vladislav Nemestikov and Valtteri Fapula, Bobby Ryan, Sam Gagner, Mark Stahl on defense, who they got in the deal from the Rangers. Danny DeKeyser isn't a bad defenseman. Neither is Philip Roenick. That's somebody that they're banking on to do well this year. Thomas Grace is their starting goaltender, the ex-Islander. To me, he just is kind of like that steady guy that doesn't really have a ceiling. In the North Division, which is the Canadian division with all the Canadian teams in there. They're calling it the North Division. In first place, I have with 69 points, the Calgary Flames. I think the Flames are loaded. Jacob Markstrom comes in to be their starting goalie as they sign him away from their rival in the Canucks. Offensively, they're loaded. Matt Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Mikhail Backlund, Elias Lindholm. On defense, Mark Giordano's getting a little bit older. Noah Hannafin's somebody that has yet to really put it all together as a player. He's been a little disappointing. Juuso Valimaki, somebody that they're relying on to be a keeper. In second place, I have with 67 points the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs are, to me, a team that I think benefits from the All-Canadian division in some ways, but not in others. I think that they're going to be in shootouts with the good offensive teams, but could really take advantage of the dregs in this division. Offensively, they're loaded. Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, all still there. They're banking on Nick Robertson to make a jump for them. On defense, Morgan Riley, still a good offensive defenseman. Jake Muzzin, someone they got in the trade from the Kings. Rasmus Sandin is someone they want to break out. TJ Brody's good. Frederick Anderson's still in goal, but he's erratic. But he's better than Peter Mrazek, but he's still erratic. In third place in the North Division with 64 points, I have the Vancouver Canucks. Obviously, they lose Jacob Markstrom in the offseason, which is a blow. Braden Holtby and Thatcher Demko is their goalie tandem. I think they'll go with Holtby for a majority, but they'll give Demko some time, who showed some promise in the postseason for them in the bubble. Elias Pettersson's a star in the making. Bo Horvat's very good. Jay Beagle is somebody that I don't think is the same player as he was in Washington. They're loaded on the wings. JT Miller, Tanner Pearson. Antoine Russell's not bad either. Brock Besser, Jake Virtanen, Louis Eriksson. And on defense, Quinn Hughes, another superstar in the making. Alex Edler's pretty good. Nate Schmidt, they got in the deal from Vegas. He's going to help them. Ali Julavy, somebody that I think could have an impact on their team as well. In fourth place with 63 points, the Edmonton Oilers. That's the last team I have in the North Division to make the postseason. So I have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl back in the postseason. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, great player. Kyler Yamamoto, they're expecting big things from. Zach Cajun had a nice year for them last year. Jesse Puljujarvi, somebody that never really put it all together. James Neal, somebody I don't think is that good anymore. Kyle Turris is a good player. He's a good number 3 center for them. On defense, they have a lot of good offensive defensemen. Tyson Barrie's a good pickup. Darnell Nurse and Oscar Clefboom are good players. Adam Larson, obviously, we know that story. They got robbed in that trade with the Devils. Chris Russell, someone that really hasn't put it together. And their starting goaltender is Mikko Koskinen. And that's crazy. And Mike Smith, I don't think is the answer either. So Edmonton, to me, has to be in the market for a goalie at the trade deadline. In fifth place in this division, the Montreal Canadiens with 60 points. On the podcast with my friend Steve, that, to me, I said was the overrated team coming into this season. Their point total was 67.5. Ridiculous. Like, Montreal's not that good. All due respect to Carey Price, who is probably the best goaltender of the century. If not, definitely top 2 or top 3, along with Henrik Lundqvist and Martin Brodeur, if you're talking about century. But in the decade, certainly the best goalie of the last decade. But the century, probably top 3. He really proved a lot of people wrong in the bubble this past year. Their defense is pretty good. Shea Weber, Jeff Petrie, Ben Sherrod is a good top 3. Angelo Edmondson to make it to top 4. Offensively, they're relying on some young guys to make steps forward, like Nick Suzuki and Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Philip Denault's a good player. Thomas Tatar's coming off a career year. Jonathan Drouin is someone I've never been a fan of. I think he's one of the more overrated players in hockey. Brendan Gallagher's a very solid player. Josh Anderson they got in the trade for Max Domi. I thought that was a weird trade for them. Tyler Toffoli's a good player, too. Joel Armia is actually a pretty good fourth-line player. In sixth place with 54 points, the Winnipeg Jets. On last week's show, I said that Winnipeg was one of the more overrated teams from the original or the actual Western Conference. They're absolutely loaded offensively. They're like the opposite of Montreal in the sense of Montreal is great or pretty good in goal and on defense, but not so great offensively. Winnipeg's the opposite. Winnipeg is loaded offensively and not great on defense, but okay in goal. They're actually pretty okay in goal. Mark Sheffley's awesome. Kyle Connor's pretty good. Blake Wheeler's getting up there in age. Patrick Laine, somebody that they might look to trade. Jack Roslovic never really has put it together. Nikolaj Ehlers is good. Paul Stastny, they got in the trade from Vegas last year. On defense, Neil Pionk had a career year last year. Josh Morrissey, somebody I am high on. Ville Heinola is a rookie to keep an eye on. If he gets called up, then that unit becomes better. He was very good in the World Juniors. And then Connor Hellebuck in goal. He's pretty good. But he's had some off years. West Division. In first place, this is obviously the most top-heavy division. And the East Division, I think, is the deepest division, if that makes sense. So in first place in the West Division, I have with 78 points, the Colorado Avalanche. This team is very, very strong on all aspects. They have a top 3 player in hockey in Nathan MacKinnon. Gabriel Landeskog and Mikko Rantanen are great. Brandon Saad's a good player. Andrei Burakovsky, Nazem Kadri, that's a great second line. And they're pretty deep too. Tyson Yost isn't a bad player. JT Compher's not a bad center. Jonas Donskoy's not bad either. On defense, Cale Makar's a superstar already. Samuel Girard's really good. They stole him in that trade with Nashville. Devin Taves, they got from the Islanders. He's a good player. Ryan Graves is pretty good too. Nathan Cole and Eric Johnson aren't a bad third pairing. Phil Garbauer, to me, I think could potentially hold them back. He held them back a little bit last year. To me, I think that it's like a Cam Talbot situation. Coming from the really good Eastern Conference contender, like Cam's case was the Rangers and Garbauer's case was Washington. They're really good East contender that masked the flaws because of a good defense. Obviously, Washington had a good defense, or still does, but not as good as it was when Washington won the Cup with John Carlson and those guys in Washington. So, Garbauer, I'm not convinced is the answer. But this is a really good team that's built for the regular season in my mind. And could potentially go deep in the postseason too. In second place with 76 points, I have the Vegas Golden Knights. This is a really loaded team as well. They have a lot of big names on their team as well. Max Pacioretty and Mark Stone. Obviously, they got in trades respectively from Montreal and Ottawa. Jonathan Marsh is also a good player. William Karlsson had that big year when he first came over to Vegas in their first season. Cody Glass is someone I'm expecting to make a jump. Alex Tuck's not bad. Riley Smith's a good player as well. On defense, they signed Alex Pietrangelo. They trade away Nate Schmidt to Vancouver, so they would have room to sign Pietrangelo. Shea Theodore's really good. Alec Martinez, obviously scoring the game-winning goal back in the 2014 Stanley Cup Final for LA against the Rangers. He's on their second pairing. Nick Colvin, I'm not a huge fan of. He's on their third pairing. Braden McNabb's not bad either. And then Robin Leonard's their starting goaltender. Marc-Andre Fleury's still there, so it looks like they're a tandem yet again. In third place, with 73 points, I have the St. Louis Blues. Like I said, this is a very top-heavy division. If the Blues or the Golden Knights were in another division, they'd win it. Like, that's how good those two teams are. And you could argue the best 3 teams are in the West Division. But the Lightning have something to say about that. But that's obviously, the Lightning obviously no Kucherov right now. So the Blues, we all know that they won the Cup 2 years ago. They have a great offense led by Vladimir Tarasenko and Ryan O'Reilly, Braden Shen, Jaden Schwartz, David Perron. Those are a really good players to have. And on defense, they're stacked. Colton Parenko, Torrey Krug, who comes over as a free agent from Boston. Vince Dunn, Justin Falk, Marco Scandella comes over in the trade. Obviously, it's unfortunate that Jay Baumeister retired after, unfortunately, having that big collapse last year in Anaheim. But, yeah, it's good that he's doing well right now, but it's just sad to see that he retired. He was a very good St. Louis Blue. And then Jordan Binghamton in net. Obviously, Jake Allen's no longer there. He's on Montreal now, so they don't have that goalie issue anymore. And Binghamton is now the full-time starter in St. Louis. In fourth place in the West Division with 56 points, the Arizona Coyotes. I think this team is poised for some big things this season in terms of turning heads from the media and some fans. Their offense, to me, has potential. Christian Jorvac and Nick Schmaltz, Clayton Keller, Barrett Hayton's a rookie that they're relying on. Phil Kessel's a veteran. He'll help them. Connor Garland's not bad. On defense, Oliver Ekman-Larsson's an absolute superstar. He's the most underrated star defenseman in the league. Alex Giolowski and Jacob Chiron are not bad defensemen either. Nicholas Drumblerson's a veteran that's been in big games before. Their starting goalie is Darcy Kemper, somebody that I'm big on. He's been really underrated these past couple years. Antti Ranta's their backup. They got him in a trade with the Rangers with Derek Stepan. That was just a bad trade for Arizona, trading a lottery pick for those guys. But we've talked about on the podcast several times that the Rangers just did not pick the right player with that pick. But the Rangers won that deal because they have a top 4 defenseman in that deal with Tony DeAngelo. Number 5 in this division, barely missing the playoffs, the Minnesota Wild. I'm not big on this team this year. This is a team that I think should get younger and start to rebuild. Zach Parise, Matt Zuccarello are vets on this team. Nick Bonino's on this team. Marcus Foligno. They can get stuff in trades for them. Marcus Johansson, too, the ex-Devil, ex-Capital. And it looks like they're building around guys like Joel Eriksson Ek and Kevin Fiala, who I like. Ryan Hartman's not that bad. On defense, they still have some big names. Ryan Sutter, Matt Dumba, Jonas Brodin, Jared Spurgeon. I think any of those 4 players could potentially be traded in the trade season. And their starting goaltender is supposed to be Cam Talbot, the ex-Ranger, ex-Oiler, ex-Flame. And Capo Kakkonen is the backup for them. Number 6 with 54 points, I have the Anaheim Ducks. Anaheim's an interesting team. They're a team that I think could surprise some people this year. They have a good defense. Hampus Lindholm, Cam Fowler, Josh Manson, Kevin Shattenkirk's a solid top 4. John Gibson, I think, is one of the more underrated goalies in hockey. They have some promising players on the wings in Ricard Raquel and Jacob Silverberg. They're relying on some guys to make jumps, most notably Sam Steele and the rookie Trevor Zegras. Ryan Getzlaff's still there. He's aging. Adam Henrique is a nice veteran player that they're relying on. The Sharks I have with 50 in 7th place. The Sharks, to me, are a team that has a ton of veterans and really just needs a splash of youth. A lot of, like I said, a lot of vets. Evander Kane's dealing with a tumultuous situation right now with the Sharks. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously, you got Logan Couture still there. I talked about Evander Kane. Timo Meyer, Kevin LeBlanc. And on defense, you have Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson leading the way. Mark-Edward Vlasic's a pretty good player as well. Devin Dubnyk's now their new starting goalie. He comes over from Minnesota. He's an upgrade over Martin Jones, who has been an utter disappointment since helping take the Sharks to the Stanley Cup Final 5 seasons ago. And in the basement of the West Division, in 8th place with 46 points, the Los Angeles Kings. To me, this is the best last place team. But I think that the points won't show for it because there's the 3 heavyweights in this division in Colorado, Vegas, and St. Louis. They still have a lot of pride on this team. And Stanley Cup champions with Jonathan Quick in goal, Drew Doughty on defense, Anze Kopitar down the middle, Alex Iafallo, Adrian Kempe, Dustin Brown's another guy that's won cups, as well as Jeff Carter. Gabriel Velarde, someone they're relying on to make a jump. Ali Mata's on their defense now. He's bounced around from Pittsburgh to Chicago. Now he's in L.A. And I talked about Jonathan Quick a minute ago. All right, the playoffs. First round, East Division. 1-seeded Flyers versus the 4-seeded Islanders. These two teams obviously met in the playoffs in the bubble. Last year they met in the semifinal. And the Islanders came out on top. I think Philadelphia gets revenge this time, led by Carter Hart. I'm going to say Flyers in 6. The 2-3 matchup in the East Division is 2-seeded Bruins versus the 3-seeded Penguins. Should be a fun matchup. I think that Tuukka Rask is somebody in decline. I think you may see a lot of Yaroslav Halak this year at Boston. And as far as I'm concerned, the best player in the series is Sidney Crosby. So I'm going to go with the Penguins in 7 over Boston. Central Division, 1 seed Tampa Bay Lightning against the 4-seeded Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm going to go with Tampa Bay in a sweep in a rematch of what was the famous upset in the postseason 2 years ago. 2-seeded Hurricanes against the 3-seeded Stars. Interesting matchup here. Obviously an Eastern Conference team versus a Western Conference team, but this is different because it's 2021 and the division alignments are different. So are the playoff alignments. I think the Hurricanes are just deeper than the Stars and they're younger than the Stars. So I'm going to go Hurricanes in 6. In the North Division, 1-seeded Flames against the 4-seeded Oilers. So a good rivalry matchup here. I just think Calgary's deeper. And I think that the Oilers still have goaltender issues. So I'm going to go with the Flames in 6. North Division, 2-seeded Maple Leafs against the 3-seeded Canucks. This is a interesting series. Toronto has had its postseason failures. And I think that could very well continue here. I think that Vancouver learned a lot last year in the bubble, making it to the semifinals and losing to Vegas after pulling off that upset against the Blues. And I think they could do it again against this Maple Leafs team, which is obviously a worse team than last year's Blues team. So I'm going to say the Canucks in 6 over the Maple Leafs. The West Division, 1-seed Avalanche against the 4-seeded Coyotes. I think this is a mismatch personally, so I'm going to go Avalanche in 5, and I'm going to say that Darcy Kemper steals 1. And then the 2-seeded Golden Knights in the West Division against the 3-seeded Blues. This is a bloodbath. I just think it's not fair that the West Division has 3 great teams in it. And the East Division has potential for 3 great teams, but I see 3 very good teams, not 3 great teams in the East Division. And I think there's a great team in the Central Division, in the Lightning. And I don't see any great teams in the North Division. So the West Division has 3 great teams, and this is a great first-round matchup between 2 really good teams. Obviously, both of these teams are in the Stanley Cup Finals 2 of the last 3 years. The Blues won it, and the Golden Knights were the runners-up to Washington, and the Blues beat Boston. This is a coin flip to me. The difference is Robin Lehner's just better than Jordan Binghamton, so I'm going to go with the Golden Knights in 7 over the Blues. The second round, East Division, 1-seeded Flyers against the 3-seeded Penguins. I think that this is a great series. Obviously, in-state rivals. These teams absolutely hate each other. Their fan bases hate each other. but I think Philadelphia is deeper than Pittsburgh. I really do, on both offense and defense. And I'm going to say Flyers in 6 over Pittsburgh. Central Division, 1-seeded Lightning against the 2-seeded Hurricanes. Good matchup. Obviously, these two teams know each other well just from seeing each other in the Eastern Conference that we traditionally know in the NHL. Difference in this series to me is that Andrei Vasilevsky is better than Peter Mrazek, so give me Lightning in 6 over the Hurricanes. North Division, 1-seeded Flames against the 3-seeded Canucks. Jacob Markstrom revenge series. Him going up against his former team, and I think that Markstrom will have a chip on his shoulder, and Vancouver's going to be thinking to themselves, why did we let this guy go? Flames in 6 over the Canucks. And then the West Division, are you kidding me? These two teams have to face off in the second round. 1-seeded Avalanche against the 2-seeded Golden Knights. Great, great, great series in the second round between these two West teams. Both of these teams are loaded. But this time I'm going to go with an upset. I'm going to go with the Golden Knights over the Avalanche in 7 because of Robin Lehner against Philip Garbauer. And I think that Lehner will, again, come through for Vegas. The semifinals. They're calling this semifinals now. And how this works is that the 4 teams left from each division will be reseeded based on how many points they have. So, the Golden Knights I projected with 76 points. Tampa Bay, 72. Philadelphia, 67. And Calgary, 69. So, the seeding for this would go Vegas 1, Tampa Bay 2, Calgary 3, Philadelphia 4. So the first semifinal matchup we have the Eastern Conference or Eastern Division 1 seed against the Western Division 2 seed Golden Knights. Obviously, in any other year, this would potentially be a Stanley Cup final. 2 great goalies in Carter Hart and Robin Lehner. And even if Fleury saw time in this series, Marc-Andre Fleury against the Flyers would be an interesting subplot. A lot of talent on both sides, obviously. A lot of veterans that have been there. Claude Giroux's been to a Stanley Cup final. Obviously, a lot of this Golden Knights team has been to Stanley Cup finals. Max Pacioretty was in a conference final with the with the Canadiens. Mark Stone was in a conference finals with the Senators. And then this Flyers team was a Game 7 win away from being in the conference finals against Tampa last year. But to me, the experience of the Golden Knights will prevail. So I'm going to go with the Golden Knights over the Flyers in 6. And then your 2-3, you have the Central 1-seeded Lightning, your 2-seed Lightning in this case, and then your 3-seed North Division champion 1-seed Flames. So this would typically be a Stanley Cup final in any other year. And the irony here is that this was the 2004 Stanley Cup final, and the Lightning won in 7 games, obviously led by that very talented team led by Martin St. Louis and Vincent Lecavalier and John Tortorella as its coach. But those days are long gone, and the Lightning have a new core led by Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos, Braden Point, Victor Hedman, and Andrei Vasilevsky. And then Calgary, obviously, has the new goalie and Jacob Markstrom and Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Matthew Tkachuk, Mark Giordano on defense, and a bunch of other talented players. So both teams are very, very talented. And to me, this comes down to depth, and I think that the Lightning have more depth than the Flames. So I'm going with the Lightning in 6 over the Flames. So the Stanley Cup final, this would normally be a Stanley Cup final in a normal season. Your Central Division 1 seed and 2 seed in the reseed semifinal, Tampa Bay Lightning against the 1 seed reseeded in the Stanley Cup semifinal, and Western Division 2 seed Vegas Golden Knights. Obviously, we have a team in the Lightning who won it all last year, and we have a team in the Golden Knights that was in the Stanley Cup final 3 seasons ago against Washington. You have Robin Lehner against Andrei Vasilevsky. two very good defenses on each side. And then you have a lot of offense in the series as well. In a year where we have a ton of uncertainty with COVID and everything, and the theme of sports returning from COVID has been the safest bet has always won. You saw it last night with Alabama in college football. We saw it with the Lightning in the bubble. We saw it with the Lakers in the bubble in the NBA. You saw it with the Dodgers in baseball. And I'm going to continue that trend and be boring and pick the Lightning to repeat as Stanley Cup champions. And you'll have your first repeat winner since the Penguins in 2016, 2017. So I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Lightning over the Vegas Golden Knights in a classic 7-game series. Although I considered picking Vegas, but I decided to go with the safer pick in Tampa. And a bonus pick for the Conn Smythe Trophy, I'm going to go with somebody coming off the injury and will have a chip on his shoulder, Nikita Kucherov. All right, awards. The Hart Trophy, I'm giving it to Nathan MacKinnon of the Avalanche. He's a special player in this league on the team that I think is going to win the President's Trophy in the Avalanche. And I think that he could very well lead the league in points. Runner-up, Sidney Crosby, Penguins. By the way, Sidney Crosby was like 25-1 to win the Hart Trophy. I talked about that with Steve when he was on the show last week. And we thought that was crazy. The Vezina Trophy, my pick, Carter Hart, Flyers. I picked him to win it last year. Didn't come through for me. I'm going to jump back on the bandwagon again and bank on it this time. I think that Philly wins the East Division in a very, very close race. And I think Hart will make improvements to show everybody that he is a franchise goalie. Runner-up, Andre Vasilevsky, Lightning. The Norris Trophy, Cale Makar, Avalanche. This guy is a mega star. John Buchacross picked Makar to win the Norris Trophy last year, but I thought that was premature. But he really did show some potential last year, and I think he really is going to, for real, put his name on hardware this year. Runner-up, Miro Heiskanen, Dallas Stars. The Calder Trophy, Igor Shesterkin, New York Rangers. You were probably expecting me to say the other Ranger, Alexis Lafreniere, but I decided to go with Shesterkin. He showed a lot of potential last year with the Rangers in a short stint, and he's somebody that reminds me a lot of Henrik Lundqvist when he was a young goalie in the league, and I think the Rangers found their next great franchise goalie here. And the runner-up, Alexis Lafreniere of the Rangers. The Selk Trophy, I'm going to go with Ryan O'Reilly of the Blues. This is somebody that is a really good two-way player and has been magnificent since coming over to the Blues in that trade. He won the Conn Smythe Trophy a couple years ago when the Blues won the Cup. And my runner-up, Patrice Bergeron of the Bruins. The Jack Adams Award, I'm going to go with Rick Tocchet of the Coyotes. I think that the Coyotes get into the postseason and earn some respect from the media and some fans. And my runner-up, Jared Bednar of the Avalanche. And that's because I have the Avalanche winning the President's Trophy. Best rookies. I made a list of rookies on every team that I think is going to perform the best. Anaheim, Trevor Zegras. Arizona, Barrett Hayton. Boston, Jack Studnicka. Buffalo, Dylan Cousins. Calgary, Connor Mackey. Carolina, Jake Bean. Chicago, Michael Tepley. Colorado, Martin Kaut. Columbus, Liam Foudy. Dallas, Ty Dellandrea. Detroit, Joseph Foligno. Edmonton, Evan Bouchard. Florida, Owen Tippett. Los Angeles, Gabriel Velarde. Minnesota, Nico Strum. Montreal, Cole Caulfield. Nashville, Eli Tolvanen. New Jersey, Jan Kokkonen. Islanders, Oliver Wahlstrom. Rangers, Igor Shesterkin. Ottawa, Josh Norris. Philadelphia, Morgan Frost. Pittsburgh, Pierre-Oliver Joseph. San Jose, Nicholas Maloki. St. Louis, Dominic Bock. Tampa Bay, Callan Foote. Toronto, Nicholas Robertson. Vancouver, Ali Julevi. Vegas, Peyton Curbs. Washington, Connor McMichael. And Winnipeg, Ville Heinola. Some of these guys on this list, obviously, I don't think are going to start the season with the team, with their respective teams, but I do think that potentially they get called up and make a big impact. Breakout / most improved players on every team. Anaheim, Sam Steele. Arizona, Connor Garland. Boston, Matt Grzelcyk. Buffalo, Rasmus Dahlin. Calgary, Juuso Valimaki. Carolina, Martin Necas. Chicago, Adam Boqvist. Colorado, Tyson Jost. Columbus, Vladislav Garakov. Dallas, Antoine Khudobin. Detroit, Christian Djoos. Edmonton, Kyler Yamamoto. Florida, Frank Vatrano. Los Angeles, Adrian Kempe. Minnesota, Kevin Fiala. Montreal, Nick Suzuki. Nashville, Dante Fabro. New Jersey, Jack Hughes. Islanders, Adam Pelech. Rangers, Capo Caco. Ottawa, Eric Brandstrom. Philadelphia, Joel Fabry. Pittsburgh, Kasperi Kapanen. San Jose, Ryan Donato. St. Louis, Robert Thomas. Tampa Bay, Anthony Cirelli. Toronto, Rasmus Sandin. Vancouver, Jake Virtanen. Vegas, Cody Glass. Washington, Garnett Hathaway. Winnipeg, Josh Morrissey. Flop players. Players I think are going to disappoint this year. Anaheim, Adam Henrique. Arizona, Derek Brassard. Boston, Tuukka Rask. Buffalo, Linus Ullmark. Calgary, Milan Lucic. Carolina, Peter Mrazek. Chicago, Brent Seabrook. Colorado, Ian Cole. Columbus, Mikko Koivu. Dallas, Joe Pavelski. Detroit, Mark Stahl. Edmonton, James Neal. Florida, Anton Strawman. Los Angeles, Jeff Carter. Minnesota, Cam Talbot. Montreal, Josh Anderson. Nashville, Ryan Johansson. New Jersey, PK Subban. Islanders, Andrew Ladd. Rangers, Tony DeAngelo. Ottawa, Artem Anisimov. Philadelphia, Shane Gostisbehere. Pittsburgh, Jared McCann. San Jose, Evander Kane. St. Louis, Torrey Krug. Tampa Bay, Pat Maroon. Toronto, Wayne Simmons. Vancouver, Jay Beagle. Vegas, Nick Holden. Washington, Carl Hagelin. And Winnipeg, Neil Pionk. Next up, players that I think will be on the Seattle Kraken. I did this segment with Steve as well. There are players that we agreed on and other players we talked about potentially being on there, but these are my official picks for who will be on the Seattle Kraken in 2021-2022. Ducks, Troy Terry. Coyotes, Christian Fisher. Bruins, Connor Clifton. Sabres, Casey Middlestat. Calgary, Andrew Magnapani. Carolina, James Reiner. Chicago, Connor Murphy. Colorado, JT Compher. Columbus, Max Domi. Dallas, Radek Faksa. Detroit, Evgeny Svechnikov. Edmonton, Adam Larson. Florida, Grigory Denisenko. Los Angeles, Lias Anderson. Minnesota, Capo Kakkonen. Montreal, Paul Byron. Nashville, Mark Borowiecki. New Jersey, Pavel Zacha. Islanders, Michael Ducali. Rangers, Jacob Trouba. Ottawa, Alex Galchenyuk. Philadelphia, Nicholas Aube-Kubel. Pittsburgh, Brandon Tanev. San Jose, Mario Ferraro. St. Louis, Marco Scandella. Tampa Bay, Tyler Johnson. Toronto, TJ Brody. Vancouver, Tanner Pearson. Vegas, Marc-Andre Fleury. Washington, Lars Eller. And Winnipeg, Paul Stastny. Last but not least, I'm going to do bold predictions for every team. I'm going to try to be quick with this one. Anaheim, my bold prediction for them is that John Gibson will finish in the top 10 of the Vezina Trophy voting. I think he'll keep them in a ton of games, and that's why I think that they may surprise some folks this year. Arizona, my bold prediction is that they acquire a big-name forward at the trade deadline to help them make the postseason. And I think it could very well be somebody in their own division. And I am looking at, I'm going to go bold here, guys, Evander Kane, someone that's dealing with some personal issues with the Stars and whatnot. I won't be shocked if they try to move him and try to get younger pieces back. I can see a world where Arizona sends some of their young assets over to San Jose, like maybe a Barrett Hayton, maybe Tyler Pitlick, maybe some of their young defensemen that they have. Maybe they send Ronta too, potentially, and maybe a pick. My prediction for the Boston Bruins is that Tuukka Rask is going to lose his starting job to Yaroslav Halak at some point during the season. Obviously, Rask, as I mentioned, his game's in decline, and I think that Halak could come in and help the Bruins win some games. Buffalo, my prediction for them is that they'll trade some players away, and one of them that I think they'll trade away because they're going to be out of the race is Kyle Okposo. He has a big contract, and I can see him getting flipped to a team that needs offense, like the Columbus Blue Jackets. And what's something that Buffalo needs? A goalie. So I'm going to say that Kyle Okposo and some young assets go in a package to Columbus for Elvis Merklund. So I'm going to say Elvis Merklund to Buffalo as a prediction here for the podcast. Calgary. My prediction for them is that Johnny Gaudreau will be a top 10 in the Hart Trophy. I think Gaudreau's going to have a big year for the Flames, and I think he could have his career best season. The Carolina Hurricanes. My prediction for them is that they will be the team that takes advantage of the new division alignment the most and will get off to a hot start and potentially come darn close to winning that division. But I'm going to say that they're the team that gets hit by like something unexpected, like maybe somebody has COVID or something and it could come back to haunt them, as they won't finish in first in that division. As much as I thought about picking them to win that division, I couldn't pull the trigger. Maybe they're the team that gets caught with the COVID outbreak or something. Or maybe a bad injury or something. The Chicago Blackhawks. I'm going to say they start to begin a rebuild, and I think that they'll finally start to trade pieces away, or at least listen. The biggest name that I think they could potentially move is Dylan Strome. He's somebody that has put up some good numbers since being acquired by Chicago. And I could see a team like the who can I see making that move? I think potentially the Islanders could be a possibility for Dylan Strome. Or Columbus, who I talked about a little while ago, but I have them acquiring somebody else. And another team that wouldn't surprise me that would acquire that player would be the New York Rangers. So I'm going to say Dylan Strome to the New York Rangers for my prediction. And I think that Alexander Georgiev, their backup goaltender, goes to Chicago in that deal, and then there's picks involved. Colorado. My prediction for them is that they will have not one, but two award winners. I mentioned it earlier. Cale Makar for Norris and Nathan MacKinnon for the Hart. My bold prediction for the Columbus Blue Jackets is that although it won't be his fault, but I'm going to say that John Tortorella, after getting swept by Tampa Bay, loses his job. Everyone and their brother thought he was going to lose his job after getting swept by Tampa, or if he got swept by Tampa 2 years ago, but ultimately they won that series. That saved him his job. But this time around, I think that Torts, unfortunately, gets the axe. The Dallas Stars. My bold prediction is that Jamie Benn has a big bounce-back year and finishes in the top 10 of the Hart Trophy. We haven't seen peak Jamie Benn in a while, and I think finally will get a little bit of it. The Detroit Red Wings will finally fire Ken Blashill. It's been a long time coming. This team's terrible. I think that Steve Yzerman will finally give him the pink slip. The Edmonton Oilers will still sit on their hands and not trade for a goaltender at the trade deadline, as they'll continue to rely on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to take them to the promised land. The Florida Panthers. I'm tempted to predict that they'll fire Joe Quenneville, but I think it's too soon. Maybe next year. That'll be a prediction under consideration if he's still there next year, but I think it's personally too soon. So instead, I'm going to say that Aaron Ekblad will have more points than Keith Yandel this year as my bold prediction for the Florida Panthers. Keith Yandel is normally a good point producer, but I think Aaron Ekblad will outproduce him this year. The Kings. I am predicting that they will make a trade of significance. And I am going to say that a player that will get moved this year is Alex Iafallo. And I think a team that could very well use a player of his caliber is the St. Louis Blues. So I'm going to say that Alex Iafallo to the St. Louis Blues. And in return, I can see them getting some young guys. I don't think they'll get Dominic Falk in that trade, but I think they can get a couple other young assets that they have, such as somebody like an Oscar Sundqvist type of player. The Minnesota Wild. I think that's a team that will shake things up too. I think Mats Zuccarello is somebody that will be traded. And I'm going to say that he gets traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think that he could really help that team. So that's the second year in a row where Pittsburgh makes a deal with Minnesota. And I'm going to say that Pittsburgh gives up some of their young guys. Maybe Cody Ceci goes in that deal. Maybe somebody like a Zach Alston-Reese as a throw-in. The Montreal Canadiens. I'm going to say that Carey Price does not finish in the top 5 of the Vezina Trophy voting. People still think he's a top 5 goalie. I do not. The Nashville Predators. My prediction for them is that they make yet another coaching change. So I think they'll fire John Hines. I think John Hines is a terrible coach. We saw him with the Devils. He did not get a lot out of that team. Took them to the playoffs once, but that was on Taylor Hall's back. Speaking of the Devils, they're next. My prediction for them is that Jack Hughes will lead them in scoring. I think that Hughes is poised for a year 2 jump and will remind people why he was the number 1 overall pick in the 2019 draft. The New York Islanders. I say that they will make another trade to help their offense, and I think they will target left wing as the need. And the player I can see them going out and getting is a veteran that has been there in big games in the past, and I think could help them in a big way. And that player, I'm predicting that gets moved to the Islanders, is Artem Anisimov, who's played in big games with Columbus, the Rangers, and Chicago. Not a big, sexy name, but someone that I could believe will help the Islanders. The New York Rangers, my bold prediction for them is that Igor Shesterkin will have a better rookie season than Alexis Lafreniere, as he will win the Calder Trophy, as I mentioned earlier. Oh, and a bonus prediction for the Rangers is I think they fire Dan Quinn, as the Rangers, to me, are one of the teams that gets screwed over due to the new divisions like Washington. And they fired David Quinn in result of it, and they'll hire Gerard Gallant, and they'll be a Stanley Cup contender come 21-22. Ottawa. My bold prediction for them is that Matt Murray will steal games for them against some of the better teams in their division. Philadelphia. My bold prediction for the Philadelphia Flyers is that Claude Giroux has a big bounce back year and will lead them in scoring. He really didn't have the best of seasons last year, and I think that he's in for a fantastic year. And then a similar bold prediction here for the Penguins, except it's Sidney Crosby, who I think will have a monster bounce-back season. And he will be in the conversation for the Hart Trophy. The San Jose Sharks, my bold prediction for them is that Devin Dubnyk will have a goals against average above 3. I just don't like the fit there at San Jose. The Blues, my bold prediction for them is that Vladimir Tarasenko will be in the top 5 for the Hart Trophy this year. I think he's in for a big season after the injury that he missed time last year. Tyler Johnson of the Lightning is somebody that I think will be traded finally, and that is my bold prediction for the Lightning. I think they'll trade him along with some other pieces. And I think they'll make a big move on defense to get some more depth. And that player that I think they'll acquire, and they'll throw Tyler Johnson in the deal. Cal Fitt won't be involved. So for the second consecutive year, they'll make a big trade to help another Stanley Cup run. And I'm going to say that is for Minnesota's Matt Dumba. I'm calling it Matt Dumba to Tampa Bay for a couple picks. Tyler Johnson in that deal as well. A couple of those young players that they got in their system. I don't think Cal Foote goes in the deal. I think Barclay Goodrow could very well be in that deal, quite frankly. Matthew Joseph, I think, could be in that deal as well. So, I'm going to say right now is that Matt Dumba to the Lightning. The Toronto Maple Leafs will yet again lose in the first round. It feels like that happens every year, and they just continually underachieve and underachieve. And then maybe in the 2021 offseason, they trade John Tavares and maybe some other pieces and just build around Austin Matthews. And maybe they look for a new goalie as well. The Vancouver Canucks, my bold prediction is that Quinn Hughes will finish in the top 5 in the Norris Trophy voting. I think he's an absolute star. I consider him as my second place pick. And I also considered Buffalo's Rasmus Dahlin as my second place pick, but I ultimately settled on Miro Heiskanen. But I'm going to say that Quinn Hughes finishes in the top 5 in the Norris Trophy voting. The Vegas Golden Knights, my bold prediction for them is that Cody Glass will see the biggest improvement this year in terms of points. Like point differential from last year to this year as being the Vegas Golden Knights number 2 center. The Washington Capitals, I'm going to say that Alex Ovechkin yet again wins the Rocket Richard Trophy. This feels like it happens every year, and I'm just going to keep rolling with the same prediction. And the Winnipeg Jets, my bold prediction for them is that Paul Maurice will be the first coach fired. I'm surprised he's still the coach of the Jets, to be quite honest. I think that the expanded playoffs saved him his job, as well as David Quinn with the Rangers. So I'm going to say that Paul Maurice will be the first coach fired this season in the National Hockey League. So there you have it, my 2020-2021 NHL season predictions. And I'm going to look back on this at the end of the season and see how well I did. So hope you guys enjoyed this one.